I suffered from anemia for 13 years. I had to take iron tablets. Sometimes I thought I was going really well and I'd stop taking the iron tablets and then I'd go down without me realising it. I even had to be rushed to hospital and given a blood transfusion. The hemoglobin levels in the blood should be between 11 and 15. Mine got down to 5 and death is 3. That's when they gave me the blood transfusion. So I would diligently look after my body. I did not want that to happen. I went to specialists. I went to naturopaths. They said you should be eating more protein. They said you should be eating more dark green leafies. But I'd look at my children, they're eating exactly what I'm eating. So I went to my anatomy and physiology books. And I discovered that iron is bound up in food and it needs acid to free it from food. And having lived with an alcoholic and a drug addict for many years, and especially the last few years were incredibly stressful, I'd lost my hydrochloric acid through the stress. How do you know if you've got low hydrochloric acid? It's 5 hours after you've eaten and you feel like you've just eaten. I was not getting the iron out of my food because I had low hydrochloric acid. No one had ever discussed that with me. And the other thing I discovered, and one of the reasons they gave me the blood transfusion, is my ferritin. Ferritin is iron stores. So my ferritin levels, which should never go under 26, were 3. So the danger of my situation was I had low iron in the blood and I had no stores. So I remember when a doctor rang me up and he said, you've got to get in hospital immediately. You have an accident, you're dead because you've got no blood. So it was a crisis there. So I'm thinking, what's going on here? How did this happen? And when this happened, I'd already left home with my children. I'd married Michael. It was a happy, happy home. But you know what had happened? My body was in the habit. My body was in the habit of making low hydrochloric acid. My liver was making low hydrochloric acid because it made low yesterday. I didn't know all that. I was keeping all the laws. So Julia, sometimes you've got to do something quick. I got to do something quick. I don't want to have blood transfusions. So when I discovered this, that ferritin is iron stores, and you know what iron needs to store it as ferritin? Protein. That's how iron stores as ferritin. It must be with protein. And if your hydrochloric acid levels are low, you're not breaking down your protein. So it all came back to what? This. That was the cause of my problem. That was the cause. So I did 2 things. I made this tea up. And I started having 1/3 of a cup of hot bitter tea before every meal. And I began implementing more legumes. I used to have legumes once or twice a week. I started to have legumes and some nuts every meal. So I boosted my protein intake and I had the bitter tea. After 6 months, I had another blood test. And I rang up the doctor's surgery and the secretary said, sorry, he's pretty busy. I said, can you give me the results? She said, no, I can't. But I said, you could answer some of my questions, couldn't you? And she said, yes, I could. I said, my hemoglobin, is it above 8? Yes. Is it above 9? Yes. Is it above 10? Yes. Is it above 11? It was above 15. Highest end of the scale. Now, I'd been living on and off on iron tablets for 13 years. And I was on no iron tablets. I said, tell me my ferritin levels. Is it above 26? Yes. Go up higher. It was way up about 50. Just out of interest's sake, what's my B12? High. What had I done? All I had done was take this bitter tea. And that bitter tea stimulated not only my liver, but also my glands making the enzyme. So can you see the liver's getting the message? I didn't know about betaine hydrochloride then. So the experience I'm telling you was about, I don't know, 15 years ago.